The people with the blue hair. You know exactly what group of people I'm talking about.
Yes, Queen. Did they pick you? Did you get the cishet validation you were looking for? Are you happy now? Do you have a girlfriend now? Before I even opened the comments, I knew it would be full of ableism and transphobia, and honestly, it's just kind of like, what do I expect from cis gays? Like, whenever they're talking about the cringy queer people, it is always trans people and neurodivergent people, and sometimes both, especially like related to non-binary people. It's just, okay. Like, look at all of this. I hope you got the validation you're so strongly craving from cishet people.
Did you know that Israel was almost in Africa? Kind of. This is one of history's craziest almost moments that you've probably never heard of. The plan was called the Uganda Scheme, and it was presented to the World Zionist Congress in 1903 by Theodor Herzl, widely regarded as the father of political Zionism. The plan would have created a Jewish homeland in East Africa. You might be wondering, why East Africa? Well, like many places in the world at the time, it was under the colonial control of the British Empire. European colonizers came into East Africa and did what colonizers do: displace, dehumanize, subjugate, murder, the list goes on. But thousands of miles away, Europe was becoming an increasingly hostile environment for Jews. In fact, in 1903, Jews in Eastern Europe faced a terrible and bloody massacre. Jews were desperate. So when Britain offered to partner with the Zionists to establish a Jewish homeland in present-day Kenya, it was appealing. So the Sixth Zionist Congress convenes in August of 1903, and Herzl calls on the 473 delegates to vote on this plan. And it passes easily, even though some hated it and many saw it as a temporary solution. But this is where it gets interesting. In the end, the Uganda Scheme never came to fruition, in large part because the white settlers in East Africa believed that it would be unfair to them to be displaced by settlers. They established an anti-Zionist immigration committee and published their disapproval in a local newspaper, causing Britain to withdraw their offer to the Zionists. All of this makes me wonder what the world would look like today if the Jewish homeland was anywhere else, or if the Palestinian people were white.
Craziest thing happened at work today.
Oh my god, the craziest thing happened to my girlfriend at work today. So essentially, she walks in and one of her coworkers who got fired was there, and
it's getting really chilly out.
yeah, it's really nice. Honestly, wait, I might run to my car because my girlfriend left her jacket in there and I'm kind of chilly. Let me go grab it.
What do you think you're gonna order?
I was thinking about the cheeseburger, but maybe I'll get the salad because my girlfriend actually really likes Caesar salads and she's always trying to find like the best one in Los Angeles. So I'm like, maybe if I find one, I can like recommend it to her, you know?
I love this song.
I know, this song is so good. Oh my god, we should do karaoke soon. My girlfriend literally sings like she's on Broadway. Like whenever we go to karaoke, everybody wants to do duets with her because she's really good, and I'm not even jealous at all because she is actually extremely good, and I love doing duets with her too.
And yeah, that's when my grandpa died.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That is really, I know that's really hard. You guys were really close. My girlfriend actually had a grandpa too, and he also, so I get it.
Black people are really not respected intellectually unless they're talking about racism, sexism, some sort of social dynamic or social construct. I've been on TikTok for about a year and a half, like posting heavily, like actually posting stuff. And one thing that I've noticed is that there is seldom a Black creator that is able to build a large platform, a large following, have people listen to and respect what they say if it is about something that we could classify as intellectual, big air quotes, because I don't really like that terminology. But think about every Black creator that you can think of that has a big platform. What do they talk about? If it's not sports or comedy or entertainment or something like that, if it's a platform where they have built the reputation to be respected intellectually for the things that they say, overwhelmingly, the only time that can happen is if what they're talking about is social dynamics. I'm not saying that there aren't Black creators that have platforms where they speak about other things that are intellectual, where they show and are respected for their intelligence. I'm just saying that they don't have huge platforms. I follow a lot of them on here. I'm friends with a lot of them. And I'm definitely not saying that anybody who's talking about any sort of social dynamics, I'm not shitting on that at all. But what I am saying is that it's bothersome that the space for Black people to be seen as intelligent is limited to damn near one topic. And maybe you disagree with me, but to me, this is an observation that's overwhelmingly true. There are, of course, exceptions, but it is rare. It is extremely rare for a black person to be able to build their reputation as intelligent, as some sort of intellectual, unless they are talking about social dynamics or social constructs. And with that being said, ironically, one of the few examples where we constantly see the exception coming true is when you have a black creator who actively and constantly makes their entire platform about speaking out against black people who do speak about those things. I'm talking about your Candace Owenses. I'm talking about those other weirdos. I don't know their names. Those other weirdos on here who just absolutely hate black people. There's a couple black dudes that they just fucking hate black people's guts. And they're constantly putting out this like anti-black shit. And they can grow big platforms. But the support that they have is coming from like white people who hate hearing about race and that sort of thing. And so to summarize, if you're black, you can really only be respected intellectually by a lot of people, enough to say that you have a huge platform if you're talking about social dynamics or if you are shitting on the black people who do that. Isn't that crazy? I'm sorry, that's nuts to me. Black people are really not respected intellectually unless they're talking about...
This video is incredible, and I pretty much agree with everything that Dakota is saying. You honestly should go back and watch the full thing because it is just full of a richness of information around a tremendous issue regarding the appropriate amount of celebration and respect for the intellectual celebration around black people and our diverse mindsets and the way that we approach the world and the way that we perceive the world as we navigate through it. I love listening to Dakota's comments so much that I wanted to add on to this because I think I actually have some insight to contribute, especially as a black person, but an ADHD and autistic person as well, but also somebody who also functions within the confines of science, but not just any science, natural resources, which if anybody who is also a mutual in the field of conservation biology or wildlife biology is a incredibly oversaturated environment full of, white individuals, but also incredibly white men. And when you consider the history of where it comes from, as women were often sometimes excluded from participating in it as well. But I also study specifically ecology as well. If anybody knows anything about ecology not only has some incredibly racist roots in histories as well, but the lack of representation for black people in ecology. I mean, you can go on Google right now and type in black ecologists, and you won't really get anything if you try to pull it up. What you get is environmental justice scholars, which is kind of the point that Dakota's making. However, one of the things I wanted to contribute to this conversation that I thought would be interesting to add on to this is Dakota is right that black people generally tend to be celebrated more for their intellectual contributions and expertise around the areas of forms of like sociology, racism, and those forms of humanities studies, and things like environmental justice and environmental justice scholarship. But I've also noticed, if you think about it, black people are also incredibly, intellectually typecasted, if you want to use that type of language, in two major categories, which I find to be really music and sports, in the ways people are celebrated for their music genius or creative, prowess in forms of athletic discipline. And I think that in some ways actually has a tremendous impact on society in the ways young black children grow up and see forms of representation in the different types of fields and avenues that they can pursue as they get older. Now, what I want to talk about, and something that I feel like I don't hear enough people talk about, especially within the black community, is something I refer to as the novelty of unconventional blackness theory. And I'll explain what this means. I find it absolutely fascinating how differently people in society will treat a black person based on the novelty or perceived novelties or unconventionality of their interests. Outside of all the negative stigmas and tropes and just general forms of racism that I've experienced, I cannot tell you the number of times I've been congratulated or applauded or treated differently when I've told people that I am a scientist or I am an ecologist or I do what is perceived as novel or unconventional things in comparison to what people expect of black people. I remember having a conversation with the guy when I was doing research in Nevada, and I remember I was telling him, I was like, I'm not really different from you. I was like, we both like science. I was like, we both like wildlife. We're both, in ecology. I was like, I just happen to be black. And he was like, that does make you special. And I think that statement in itself, while his attempt was to be flattering, I think really nails down the idea of like how white people perceive black people and what they expect of us when it comes to particular forms of interests or the ways in which we exude talents, but also the ways in which we pursue pursue particular types of avenues when it comes to careers and the spaces in which we reside in. But also it shows a clear amount of awareness of the lack of representation when it comes to the sciences, and the fact that by participating in something, that inherently makes it novel, or us, ourselves novel, by participating in these underrepresented fields. I very much find the experience of being Black as constantly having to justify your existence in a reality where you continually feel invisible or diminished, but then upon doing something that is perceived as novel or unconventional, you are then presented with a layer of merit or treated as an exception of the rule, despite all the negative and harmful stereotypes and tropes that were already presuppositions against you coming into a world where you knew none the wiser. And I think that's pretty sinister.
Hey guys, here's 6 ways you can avoid activism fatigue. Number 1, when watching videos about Palestine, if your attention span is getting shorter or you're starting to hear the same few things, watch videos on 2x speed by pressing and holding your screen. Even if you're not interested in what the creator is saying, you can make a game out of just trying to keep up, and they'll still get your view. And always like, share, save, comment, and repost everything about Palestine. Keep it relevant, keep it trending. Number 2, imbue your activism in the daily things that don't take effort. Getting dressed? Wear Palestine flag colors or messaging. Printing something? Print a poster or sticker and pull a Miles Morales. Art student? Center your next project on Palestine. You're surrounded by pro-Israeli subliminal messaging, so make some messaging of your own. Number 3 is for my ADHDers. Set daily reminders to contact your representatives and save the websites you use to contact them to your home screen or favorites. The most difficult thing for a lot of us, including me, isn't wanting to do it, it's remembering and getting yourself to do it. That becomes easier when you keep the option visible. In sight, in mind, if you will. Number 4, find and follow TikTokers who live stream Disney Plus. If you still have your Disney Plus account and are unwilling to delete it, then become that TikToker. Let's be honest, we want to watch Loki, we want to watch Inside Out too, but if we all watch together, then Disney still loses money. Number 5, get and stay in a sustainable mindset. In this leg of the game, most of the battle is taking place in our heads, and our 2 greatest enemies are hopelessness and shame. First, hopelessness. Here's the thing: grief, pain, rage, all appropriate reactions, all incredible motivators in the short term. But after a while, they start to weigh you down, and with no end in sight to the cause of those feelings, you start to just want to ignore it all to feel something else. And here's the kicker: that is natural. Serotonin is important to keep you going. That's why depression is an illness. If your activism is only fueled by grief and pain and rage, then of course it won't be sustainable, because those feelings are not sustainable. Instead, your joy, your love, your fear, even just your meh, need to also be fueling your activism. Like that video because something good happened today. Make your coffee at home because you just love and respect your Palestinian friends so much. Send that email because dude, whatever. And don't feel guilty for these feelings. You have the privilege of still being able to be happy, and it is not only okay, but necessary for you to use that privilege to keep being there for our siblings in Gaza. Next, let's talk shame, aka being that person. This is the point where a lot of people will start looking at those still fighting for Palestine like, dude, will you give it a rest already? And when this happens to you, you're gonna be inclined to quiet down or shut up to avoid embarrassment. This is, you guessed it, also natural. Many studies have shown that humans generally don't like to stand out or be a nuisance. One way to combat this is doing it in groups, but another way is reframing how you see being a nuisance. See, we want the genocide to stop because we're human beings with beating hearts, but our political leaders obviously aren't, so we need to give them a different reason to want the genocide to stop. And that reason is because if it doesn't, we'll keep being a pain in the ass. We need to make them so unbelievably sick of our screaming and whining and bitching and moaning and boycotting and blockading and marching and traffic blocking and draft dodging that they literally can't function until they shut us up. And the only way to shut us up must be to give Palestinians full freedom and justice. So from here on out, annoying is a compliment. Nuisance is our pride. Shut up means get louder. For the foreseeable future, we are toddlers on an airplane, screaming until we get our goddamn candy. And don't you feel bad about it, babe, because your fellow screaming toddlers are right here with you. Number 6. Make your own video of ways to avoid activism fatigue. You can include some of the things on this list or add your own, but if you actually put in the work of telling others what to do, you're more likely to do it yourself because nobody wants to be a hypocrite. That's right, I made this whole video just as a means of forcing myself to do the things on this list. Let's make it a trend!
Nothing's new, 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 nothing's So I'm out here protesting, right? And this man comes up to me. He comes up to me and he shakes my hand. And he tells me that he's a conservative, he's a religious person, but he was also in Iraq. Like he was, United States soldier. And he was telling me that at the time he thought he was fighting for the right cause. He was telling me how the people over there in Iraq were calling him the Great Satan, calling all the soldiers, the US presence, the Great Satan. And he looked at me with such endearing eyes and he said, I think they might have been right. I realized that the cause that we were fighting for was not really what we were being told. And here's just the message saying it doesn't matter if you're on the left or if you're on the right. It's time to really keep those that are in charge in check, because they're running away from it. They're running away from everything that we in America are fighting for.
Do you genuinely think that Israel and the Western world are actually scared of Hamas? But Palestine is Hamas. That's like saying Afghanistan is the Taliban. Or, sorry, let me find an example with white people so that you'll care. But that's like saying Russia is the Kremlin, or the United States is Congress, or Britain is the Parliament. Hamas is not just a military organization. It is a governing body. It is the government of the Gaza Strip. It's not supposed to be, but it has been the de facto one-party government of Gaza for almost 20 years. The last time there was an election in Palestine was in 2006. At the time, Hamas was a sort of normal right-wing political party. Back then, Hamas won the popular vote by only like 3%, but they ended up with twice as many seats in parliament as the other party because of the electoral system. Sound familiar? The two parties in parliament had a deal to act as a bipartisan government, but then in 2007 Hamas broke the deal and killed a bunch of politicians and became the de facto ruler of an autocracy. But Hamas wants to genocide the non-Islamic world. Okay, say that they do. Does what is happening right now seem like it will solve that? Genuinely, does it? Here, let's do some math. The entire country of Palestine contains about 5.3 million people. The Gaza Strip, which is about half the size of Austin, Texas, contains 2.2 million people. Of those 2.2 million people, 47% are under the age of 18, and 40% are under the age of 15. Now, Palestine has no actual military, no land army, air force, or navy. But Hamas, which like we said is the de facto government, has paramilitary fighters. Now, this is obviously impossible, but bear with me. If every single male ages 15 and up in the entire Gaza Strip was a Hamas fighter, their forces would still be smaller than just the Israeli military. By the way, the actual number of Hamas fighters is anywhere from 10 to 40,000, compared to Israel's 634,000, counting its reserve corps. In terms of actual leaders of Hamas, like military and political leaders recognized and discussed in Western and Israeli media, currently 6 people. Do you genuinely think that Hamas committing genocide against the entire non-Islamic world is a legitimate existential threat? Thinking critically on raw numbers, do you actually believe that? More importantly, do you actually believe that the correct response to that threat is the preemptive genocide of an entire people? And do you believe that anyone, the US, the UK, Israel, anyone, is actually concerned with the Israelis that were killed and taken hostage on October 7th? Or do you think that a bunch of rich countries see an opportunity, a political foothold in a region with a wealth of resources in which we have no allies? Do you think they just see an easy sacrifice that they don't have to look at?
The most useless people during times of great moral crises are the spiritual girlies, the ones who cut out all the bad vibes and want to maintain a positive energy. Yeah, fuck you. Israel's committing a genocide. Israel's killed more babies in the last 30 days than any country has killed in this century. And you want to what? Self-actualize still? Are you going to self-actualize and then you're going to help out? Or is not helping out part of your self-actualization process? I'm just curious. Oh, well, the conflict's so complicated, and I don't want to take a side because I'm not fully educated. Israel's killed more babies in the last 30 days than any country has killed in the last 50 years. Oh, it's so complicated. It's not complicated. It's not complicated. And because it's so not complicated, the solution's also not complicated. I need you shitposting. I need everyone shitposting. Because this is an information war, and the way you win an information war is by shitposting. And it's super easy to out shitpost Israel because all you have to do is keep pointing out that they're an ethno-state that doesn't represent the Jewish people and they are dedicated to the genocide of the Palestinian people. And you just got to point that out over and 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 over again. And then they'll get defunded. And that's the war. That's the game. In the United States, remember the phrase defund the police? Well, hey guys, we send our police to Israel to get trained by their military. All right? So in the vein of defund the police, defund Israel, the police state. And the thing is, you should want to defund Israel. They have free healthcare and we send them our money. Fuck that. Just fuck that. Americans are dying from inflation and we send Israel our money. This is the easiest conflict to resolve in the history of mankind. Shitpost.
Hello everyone, my name is Amnia, I'm 21 years old and I'm from Sudan. I'm making this video to raise awareness about the current situation many Sudanese people are going through. Before April 15th, I used to be a very normal university student in my final year and I was doing my internship at my dream job. I was surrounded by my loved ones and living a very normal life like the rest of the world. Until April 15th when I had woken up to the sounds of bombing and shelling, to my house literally shaking. I lived under absolute terror until I was able to flee to a nearby city, and ever since life has not been the same. And the situation has been declining severely. This city lacks infrastructure, and it's actually one of the best cities in Sudan right now. Yet we still have shortage of water, electricity, you name it. The healthcare system has collapsed. It's nearly impossible if you're having a critical situation, like a critical medical situation, it's nearly impossible to find a hospital that would take you in if you're an emergency patient. Many people have died due to the lack of medical attention. The violence in Sudan is spreading like wildfire, and it's senseless. Raping, looting, killing, humiliating, murdering, you name it. You name it. 90% of the houses in the capital, my city, have been looted. Life assets looted. Many people now are homeless and are helpless and hopeless. There are 7 million displaced people, 5 million internally displaced, like myself, and people who are refugees. Right now in the West, people are getting ethnically cleansed. There's a genocide. Only in 5 days, 2,000 people have died. How many more lives would it take for the world to step in, for people to care? I'm sick and tired of the dehumanization of African lives. I am sick and tired of our suffering falling into deaf ears. We're also people. We're just like everyone else. We're not just statistics. We're humans with hopes, dreams, and aspirations like the rest of you. Please speak up about Sudan before it's too late.
This painting is a lot more political than you probably think it is, and in ways that might surprise you. My name's Austin DeLuga-Liston. I'm an artist and an art teacher. As you might know, this is a painting by Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell was an American painter and illustrator, and he's famous for a type of art that we call American regionalism. American regionalism came about in the 1930s and gained popularity, and it stayed very popular through the 1940s and World War II. It's most notable for its embrace of patriotism. It remains very popular to this day with American conservatives, partially because of all the happy white faces. Although this style of painting is most often associated with a kind of nostalgia, which is why the right wing loves it, it actually was a looking forward to the future. This painting gets sometimes referred to as the Thanksgiving picture. It's also sometimes referred to as I'll Be Home for Christmas, but its actual title is Freedom from Want. It was painted in 1943, and it is a series of 4 paintings which refer to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's State of the Union address from 1941, the 4 freedoms. The 4 freedoms are freedom from want, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, and freedom from fear. And although I don't think this was intended to be any sort of radical political statement, I do think in our contemporary times, for some reason, the idea that people deserve food is a radical statement. I'll also mention that Norman Rockwell got a lot more progressive throughout his life. This is one of his paintings from the 1960s. It's titled The Problem We All Live With, and it is a portrait of Ruby Bridges being walked to school. There's a racist slur painted right here that I have cropped out because I don't want to be removed from the platform. I find the work of Norman Rockwell to be really interesting, not particularly as paintings, but because the narratives are so clear and so didactic, and yet they are able to be repurposed to suit different political narratives based on who's telling the story.